From day one, Nomad Capitalist has been about go where you're treated best, not stay and fight. People have pushed back on that at times, and today I'm going to share with you some stories of people who have chosen to stay and fight and seemingly aren't very happy about it. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. This is Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors legally go where you're treated best. Now, today's episode, I believe, will be highly controversial. I don't intend for it to be political, but I want to make the point that we've talked about here at Nomad Capitalist of why I believe go where you're treated best is far superior than staying and fighting. And if you're from the United States, where the people that we're talking about today are from, then almost certainly you have an ancestor who 1, 2, 5, or 10 generations ago decided wherever they were was no longer palatable for them. The conditions, be they economic, be they personal freedom, be they whatever, were not to their standards. And they decided to go where they were treated best, which perhaps at the time was the United States. It was at least the best marketed place in the world to go where you're treated best. Now, we've talked about statistics, we've talked about the dwindling liberties, we've talked about the rising taxes that, in my opinion, make the United States no longer the best place in the world to live. But yet, I think so many people, including some people who watch this channel, believe that staying and fighting is the only thing that you can do. I think for some people there's a certain romance of this, kind of being Rambo and taking over. We're going to talk about why that's important in a moment. And just this idea that, as people say, there's nowhere to run, this kind of defeatism out of 200 plus jurisdictions in the world, there's nowhere to go. And for me, I've always said, and certainly I've been criticized for it, and I'm sure I will be again, that if you want to stay in your country and put up with the nonsense, that's fine. But don't try and defend it as this is the best country on earth and guys like me are going to be running. Number one, I'm not running. Number two, I can guarantee you that I have more day-to-day personal freedom and a much better financial situation than I would if I lived in the United States. And so the article I want to share with you comes from Business Insider, actually just Insider. And it talks about the headline, Inside a DC Jail's Patriot Wing, where Capitol riot defendants sing the national anthem and act like prisoners of war, but struggle to cope with being locked up. Now, this is not a political channel. I do not live in the United States. It is not my concern, and nor do I want to rehash the politics that have been discussed on countless other channels about what happened in the U.S. on January 6th. I'm not imparting my own thoughts into that at all. It's not my business. It's not my place to talk about it. But I do want to bring your attention to the fact that here are people, the Patriot Wing, that's what they're calling the wing of the jail where these 40 people are staying in this DC jail. The people who have formed, as the article says, a strong bond, even developing nightly rituals. They said, whether you agree with them or not, we're going to stand up to the system. And they stood up, and the impact was really not what they wanted to happen. So for everyone who says, you know what, thank goodness we have guns in this country, and they're going to stand up on their rooftop, and they're going to go against the system, this is what happens. Some people wind up dead. Some people wind up in jail. And if I'm going to be accused of running, which in my case just happens to be I like living in different places and getting the benefits of many different business opportunities, social opportunities, cultural opportunities around the world, that to me seems a lot better than being locked up in jail, seems a lot better than being picked off my rooftop. But here's the article. You can judge for yourself. Every night at 9 p.m., they stop what they're doing to sing the Star-Spangled Banner. Some of them are in their cells and some of them are out in the common area. But whatever it is they're doing, they stop and they sing, Cynthia Hughes told Insider. She has a nephew who's one of about 40 Capitol riot defendants held without bail in connection with the January 6th attack on the Capitol. Hughes requested that Insider not name her nephew. That group is being housed in a separate section of the sprawling central detention facility in southeast Washington, located just a few miles from the building they were accused of storming. To most people, that section is called the Correctional Treatment Facility, but to many of the defendants, their supporters, and even some Republican lawmakers, it's called the Patriot Wing. It houses defendants facing the most serious accusations in relation to, their word, the insurrection. Some of the residents are tied to organized extremist groups, many are accused of assaulting police officers, etc., etc. But as the defendants await their trial, the article says, they appear to have formed a tight-knit group, creating nightly rituals and organizing group activities. What is that, for example? Well, in an October 26th court filing, one attorney recounted the moment he heard the defendants sing their nightly rendition of the national anthem while on the phone with his client. I heard them myself, Brenwald said. He's the attorney. It was literally this herd mentality. They're literally singing, most of them off key, literally singing the song. It was pretty scary, actually. But Hughes, who speaks to her nephew daily, says the singing is what gets them through. Now, if they chose to go where they were treated best, they wouldn't have to get through. They'd be living freely. They would be enjoying their life. And by the way, one of them apparently did abscond to Belarus, where he's now living and fleeing the charges. But Greg Hunter, an attorney for two other defendants at the jail, told Insider that singing was an homage to the Hanoi Hilton prison in North Vietnam, which held American prisoners of war during the Vietnam War. The late Senator John McCain, who was held there, recalled in 2013 a cellmate standing up to the Vietnamese guard by singing the Star-Spangled Banner. To witness him sing the national anthem in response to having a rifle pointed at his face, well, that was something to behold. For many of the Capitol riot defenders, described by some GOP politicians as political prisoners, singing the national anthem is a similar act of defiance. The group has also formed a close bond, Hughes said. They're very solid in there. They're united. They've got a prayer group. They've got a Bible study group. She says many of the detainees still feel very strongly about the election, continue to support President Donald Trump, even though they're frustrated he hasn't sufficiently backed them in return. As they sit in a one-man cell, they do get to mingle in communal areas to stay occupied. They organize events, most recently arranging a Halloween DIY craft contest. And so the article goes on. Now again, I understand this is going to flare promotions. That's not my intention. But our position here has been very strong. Now, you may feel a patriotic fervor for your country. I didn't have that. You may think that it makes you strong to do this. You know what I think is also strong? I think people who are creating businesses, employing people, creating opportunities, changing people's lives, I think that's pretty strong. It takes a lot of strength to do that and to push through and to fight and build something. Whether you're Elon Musk or whether you're any of the smaller entrepreneurs, yours truly included, who have struggled and built things. It takes a strong character, not just to stand up to the government, but to do a lot of things in life. And at a certain point for me, it comes down to, what do I want my impact to be? And I look at what I do here, sitting in freedom and talking to all of you, reaching tens of millions of people a year through our various channels, having events, working with clients. People come up to me all around the world and say that they've moved places, they've done things, they've changed their life, they've got out of toxic relationships in some cases, all because they heard, go where you're treated best. Now, I'm not here to, again, comment on what these people in jail are doing. I don't live in the U.S., I'm not a U.S. citizen, again, not really my business to comment on it or to have an opinion. But everyone has this, the people who are in this stay and fight mentality have this fantasy that it's going to be like the Revolutionary War. But a lot of times it just ends up like this. You go to jail, they're going to get convicted. One of the most prominent members, the so-called face of what happened on January 6th, was recently convicted to, I believe, between 3 and 4 years in jail. What's the impact of that? Certainly it has divided the country, and certainly the country was divided. And so there are people who support that. Those people are out of power. You have Joe Biden, an entirely Democratic part in power. Now, you will probably see in the United States a big resurgence of Republican power in parts of Congress next year. I don't think it's because of this. I think it's because people think that Joe Biden is doing a pretty bad job. And that's what's typically happens in midterm years. So what I'm saying is, how many of these people who are sitting in jail had ancestors who moved to the U.S. who decided, you know what, this place where I'm at X number of generations ago isn't worth fighting for. It's not worth me potentially being imprisoned. It's not worth me being killed. It's not worth me dying. It's not worth me losing my fortune. They simply left and they went somewhere better. That is what countries that are based on immigrants have. And yet people want to say, well, if you don't want to defend it, that means you're cutting and running. You're entitled to your opinion. I think having the greatest impact, I think doing the best for your family financially, being able to keep the most amount of your wealth, that you can build up your legacy, you can continue to build a business, you can give to worthy causes, that's valuable. And it's a lot more valuable than going and fighting a system which is much more powerful than you are, and it is just going to steamroll you over. Quite frankly, this to me is another example. Would I rather be sitting here talking to you, or be sitting in a jail cell singing the Star-Spangled Banner with 40 other people? It's not even close. I don't think they want to be in jail singing the Star-Spangled Banner. And so whatever you think about that, listen, this is what pragmatism is. Whether you think they're right or they're wrong or whatever you think, it's irrelevant. They're there. And for me, being able to have an impact, being able to build a legacy is important. They will certainly, some of them will have some legacy. But you look at all these things around the world, and it's funny is, people from the United States, and I presume people in most countries, they think that whatever happens in their country is pretty normal and pretty fair, and then they look at this kind of stuff happening somewhere else. Oh my goodness, look at what they did to the people, or look what the people did to them. And there's not an equal footing for evaluating stuff. But by and large, if you look throughout history, it's not a lot of people who make headlines, who make history, who are remembered. Will these people be remembered? What will the impact be against a behemoth government that said, no, you're wrong? That's what happens a lot more times, whether you've seen it with big leaders, leaders of countries, whether you've seen it with just average everyday people who fight the system. Doesn't work for them. I truly believe that going where you're treated best allows you to have the greatest impact. And to me, that's very valuable. Don't stop now. We've got well over 1,000 more videos here on YouTube for you to watch and learn how to go where you're treated best. And if you want to work with Nomad Capitalist personally, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply, learn about our unique, tried and true process, garnered over years of experience, and learn how you can become our client.